Did you know the heartbreaking reason Lucille Ball fought so hard to keep Desi Arnaz on her show? Lucille Ball was the vibrant, red-headed force of nature who taught the world how to laugh. But behind the slapstick comedy and the iconic Waaah was a woman who spent decades crying in private. Known as the Queen of Comedy, Lucille was a perfectionist who built an empire, yet she was haunted by a childhood of poverty and a marriage that was as volatile as it was passionate. While audiences saw the perfect, hilarious chemistry of Lucy and Ricky Ricardo, the reality behind the scenes was a grueling battle against infidelity, alcoholism, and the crushing weight of being a woman in a man's world. In her final years, Lucille finally began to peel back the curtain on the unspeakable pressure of maintaining a facade of happiness while her world was crumbling. Lucille Desiree Ball was born on August 6, 1911, in Jamestown, New York. Her early life was marked by a sudden, devastating tragedy that would shape her need for control for the rest of her life. When Lucille was just 3 years old, her father, Henry Ball, a telephone lineman, passed away from typhoid fever. Lucille vividly remembered the black cloud that settled over her home that day, a day when the birds stopped singing and her mother was paralyzed by grief. Raised by her mother, Dee Dee, and her stern, eccentric grandparents, Lucille grew up in a working-class environment where every penny was pinched. She was a restless, imaginative child who sought escape in the local theater, but her path to stardom was paved with rejection. When she moved to New York City to attend John Murray Anderson's dramatic school, she was told by her instructors that she had no future as a performer and should go home. But Lucille Ball was a woman who didn't know how to quit. For years, Lucille struggled in relative obscurity, working as a model under the name Diane Belmont and taking on small, uncredited roles in films that many fans have long since forgotten. She was a Goldwyn girl, a beautiful face in a sea of beautiful faces, but she possessed a sharp comedic sensibility that Hollywood didn't quite know what to do with. She spent the 1930s and 40s earning the nickname Queen of the B-movies at RKO and MGM, appearing in films like Stage Door alongside Katharine Hepburn and Ginger Rogers. While she was respected for her work ethic and her ability to handle any script thrown her way, mainstream superstardom eluded her. It was during this period of professional waiting that she met a charismatic young Cuban band leader named Desi Arnaz on the set of Too Many Girls. Their chemistry was explosive, a literal lightning strike that would ignite a romance the world would never forget. But it was also the beginning of a cycle of heartbreak. Lucille and Desi were married in 1940, a union that their friends and family predicted wouldn't last 6 months. They were opposites in every way. Lucille was the disciplined, meticulous professional from New York, and Desi was the hot-tempered, fun-loving musician from Santiago de Cuba. As Desi's band toured the country, Lucille stayed behind in Hollywood, her heart breaking with every rumor of his late-night escapades and heavy drinking. Many fans don't realize that I Love Lucy was actually Lucille's desperate attempt to save her marriage. She believed that if she could force the network to hire her husband to play her on-screen husband, he would finally be forced to stay home. She fought a grueling battle against CBS executives who claimed that audiences wouldn't accept an all-American girl married to a man with a thick Cuban accent. Lucille won that battle, creating a cultural phenomenon, but in doing so, she chained herself to the very man who was tearing her apart. As I Love Lucy became the most watched program in television history, the stakes grew higher than Lucille ever imagined. Together, she and Desi formed Desilu Studios, eventually becoming the most powerful couple in Hollywood by purchasing the old RKO lot where they had first met. Lucille wasn't just an actress, she was a mogul,
Did you know the secret burden Paul
massive
Newman
production
carried
slate
behind those
that
famous
included
blue
future
eyes?
classics like
Paul
Star
Newman
Trek
was
and
born
Mission
Paul
Impossible.
Leonard Newman
But
on
the more
January
power she
26,
gained, the more Desi
1925,
struggled.
in the
He
quiet,
felt
tree-lined
emasculated by
suburb
her
of Shaker
success
Heights,
and
Ohio.
retreated further
Growing
into his
up in a
vices.
comfortable, yet
Behind the
disciplined
scenes, the
household,
laughter was
he was the
replaced by
son of
screaming
Arthur Newman,
matches that could be
a
heard
successful
throughout the
Jewish
studio.
businessman who
Her
owned a
chemistry
thriving
with
sporting
co-stars
goods
Vivian
store,
Vance
and
and
Teresa
William Frawley
Fetsko,
was
a
legendary,
woman of
but even
Slovak
that was
descent
marred
who
by
possessed
tension.
a deep love love for
Frawley
the
and
arts.
Vance famously
From
despised
an early
each
age,
other,
Paul
and
was caught
Lucille
between the
often had to
pragmatic,
act as the
hard-working
exhausted
world of his
referee
father
while her
and the
own marriage was in
expressive,
its death
creative
throes.
world of his mother.
By 1960,
While his
the
parents worked
laughter on the
hard to
set of
provide a
I Love
stable
Lucy
life for
had
him and
become
his
a
brother,
mask for
Arthur,
a marriage that was
Paul
physically
often felt
and
like an
emotionally
outsider in his
exhausted.
own home,
Lucille
a young
had spent
man
years
searching for a purpose
meticulously
that didn't
protecting
involve
Desi's
the
image,
family
but
business.
the unspeakable
In
reality of his
1943,
private life,
with the
the
world
endless
engulfed
nights
in the
away,
fires
the
of World
gambling,
War
and the
II,
addiction
Paul
could
enlisted
no
in the
longer
United
be hidden
States
behind
Navy,
a laugh track.
hoping to find
On the
adventure
very day
and a
they
sense of
filmed the
duty.
final episode of the
He
Lucy
dreamed of
Desi
becoming a
Comedy
pilot,
Hour,
a
Lucille
role that would
filed
have
for
suited
divorce.
his natural
Many
athleticism
fans don't
and
realize
daring
that
spirit.
as she stood on that
However,
stage, smiling
during
for
a
the
routine
cameras and
flight
taking her
physical,
final
it
bow
was
with
discovered
Desi,
that he was
she was privately
colorblind, a
preparing for a
revelation
life
that
of
grounded his
professional
dreams of
independence
flying
that
but
terrified her.
inadvertently saved
She
his
was
life.
a woman in her 50s,
Instead,
an age when Hollywood
he served as a
typically
radio
discarded
man
its
and
leading
tail
ladies,
gunner on
but
torpedo
Lucille
bombers
had
in the
an
Pacific
empire
Theater.
to run. She
His
became
time
the
in the
first
military
woman to
was
head
marked
a
by a
major
chilling brush
television
with
studio,
mortality.
proving
His
that
plane
while
was
her heart
grounded
was
due to
broken,
his pilot's
her
ear
business mind
infection,
was sharper than ever.
causing them to miss a
In
mission from which no one in his unit
Lucille
returned.
met Gary Morton,
This
a
experience
stand-up
left an
comedian who
indelible
was
mark
several
on his
years her
soul,
junior.
instilling a
Unlike the
lifelong
fiery,
sense of
unpredictable
survivor's guilt
Desi,
and a
Gary
belief
was
that his
stable,
life was governed by a
supportive,
luck
and
he hadn't
content to
quite
live in
earned.
Lucille's formidable
Returning
shadow.
home from the war,
They were married
Paul
within
felt a
a year,
restless
beginning
energy
a
that led him to
partnership that would
Kenyon
last
College
until
and
the
later
end
to
of
the
her life.
Yale School of Drama.
While Gary brought a
But it
sense
was
of
in the
peace
gritty,
to her
high-stakes
home, he also
environment
became
of New
her
York
business
City's
partner,
New York
helping
theater
her
circuit
navigate the
that he
shifting
truly
landscape
began
of
to hone his
television.
craft.
Lucille
Like
returned
many
to the
young
screen
actors
with
of his
Lucy's
era,
show and
Paul
later
struggled
Here's
to
Lucy,
break through the
often
shadow of
casting
more
her
established
real-life children,
stars.
Lucy Arnaz
He was
and
often
Desi
compared to
Arnaz
Marlon
Jr. to keep
Brando,
them close.
a comparison
But
that
the industry
frustrated
was
him as he
changing.
sought to
The
find his
slapstick
own
humor that
unique
had made her a
voice.
legend was being replaced by
During
gritty,
this period of
relevant
relative
sitcoms,
obscurity,
and
he
Lucille
worked
began to feel like a
tirelessly,
relic
taking
of a
acting
bygone
classes
era.
and auditioning
She was
for
a
any role that
perfectionist
would
who
have
often
him.
clashed with younger
It was
directors
during these
and writers
lean years
who
that he
didn't
married his
understand
first
her
wife,
meticulous
Jackie
approach to
Witt,
comedy.
an aspiring
Throughout
actress
her career,
herself.
Lucille also
They
carried the
settled
weight
into a
of a
modest
secret
life,
political
and
scandal
soon they
that
were
nearly
raising 3
destroyed her
children,
during the height of the
Susan,
Cold War.
Stephanie, and
In
their only son,
1953,
Scott
she had
Newman.
been questioned by the House
Paul worked
Un-American
regular
Activities
jobs to
Committee
support his
regarding
growing
her
family,
brief registration
all
as a
while
communist
never
in the
abandoning his
1930s,
dream of the
a
silver
gesture she
screen.
claimed was merely to please her
Paul's big
socialist
break finally
grandfather. While Desi had famously protected her by telling the audience the only thing red about Lucy is her hair, the fear of being blacklisted haunted her for decades. This persistent stress, combined with her heavy smoking habit and the grueling hours of studio management, began to take a toll on her health. Behind the scenes, the woman who made the world laugh was increasingly plagued by severe anxiety and chronic fatigue, though she refused to let the public see even a hint of her struggle. Despite their divorce and their subsequent marriages, the bond between Lucille and Desi was one that time and distance could never truly erase. As Desi's health began to fail due to lung cancer in the mid-1980s, Lucille was a constant presence in his life. In her final years, she spoke of the deep, complicated love they shared, a love that was too big for a marriage but too strong for a divorce. At his deathbed in December 1986, Lucille sat with him, holding his hand as they watched old tapes of I Love Lucy. Their final conversation was a quiet, private exchange of I love yous, a moment that Lucille later described as the most heartbreaking of her life. When he passed away, a part of her seemed to go with him. The fiery redhead who had conquered Hollywood suddenly looked more fragile than ever. Lucille's final professional attempt, the 1986 sitcom Life with Lucy, was a critical and commercial failure that left her deeply wounded. She felt that the audience she had loved for 40 years had finally moved on. In April 1989, she underwent an emergency 7-hour heart surgery to repair an aortic dissection. True to her spirit, she initially seemed to recover, even joking with the nurses and asking about her children. But on the morning of April 26th, at the age of 77, Lucille Ball suffered a second fatal rupture of her abdominal aorta. Her passing was met with a global outpouring of grief. From Bob Hope to Elizabeth Taylor, the titans of Hollywood paused to honor the woman who had blazed a trail for every female comedian who followed. Lucille Ball was laid to rest at Forest Lawn Memorial Park in Hollywood, but her children later moved her remains to her beloved hometown of Jamestown, New York, to be near her family. Her grave remains a place of pilgrimage for fans who come to say thank you to the woman who made their childhoods brighter. Lucille was a pioneer who proved that a woman could be both the funniest person in the room and the smartest person in the boardroom. She won 4 Emmys, a Golden Globe, and the Presidential Medal of Freedom. But her true legacy is the laughter that continues to echo in living rooms across the world.
As we look back at the life of Lucille Ball, we see a woman of immense courage and devastating vulnerability. She taught us that it's okay to be messy, to fail, and to cry, as long as you eventually find a way to laugh again. Her story is a reminder that even the brightest stars have to navigate the dark, and that the most enduring loves are often the most complicated. Lucille Ball wasn't just a clown, she was a queen who wore her crown with both grace and grit.